founder of Anasomo Integrative Wellness and the co-author of She Thrives. And now the forthcoming book, Restoring Balance, an Integrative Approach to Women's Health Through Nutrition, Lifestyle, and Systems Biology. Dr. Sotsiropoulos is rooted in helping women understand the deeper drivers behind symptoms related to gut health, hormones, energy, mood, resilience, rather than simply managing those systems in isolation. We're also joined by Paula, a visionary biotechnology leader, entrepreneur, board director, investor, and passionate advocate for women's health. And it's an honor to be joined by both of you. Paula has spent more than 35 incredible years advancing innovative therapies for difficult to treat diseases and personalized medicine, including serving as the founder and CEO of Acacia, is that right? Therapeutics?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, friend, I should have. Where she led the company through its IPO and the commercial launch of 2 rare disease medicines. She later launched and now currently serves as chairman of the board of Insoma and on several other biotech boards, while also championing investment, advocacy, and innovation in women's health. And I don't know how you have the time to do it all, Paula. I know y'all all heard the last same name, which makes this so special because Paula and Alexia bring this powerful mother-daughter perspective to this conversation, one from the front lines of executive leadership and biotech innovation, and one from the clinical side of helping women reconnect with their bodies, identify their root causes, and restore vitality, and a witness to the cost of leading at such a high pace. Today, we're going to talk about high performance and what that can quietly cost women, where conventional medicine and corporate culture may be missing important signals, and what women and leaders can begin doing differently. We'll also touch on practical strategies around nutrition, stress, recovery, intermittent fasting, cycle syncing, and how leaders can better understand the biology and resilience of the women on their teams. So with that, Paula, Alexia, thank you both again for being here with me. I'm thrilled to have this conversation. So Alexia, I'm going to ask you our first question, if that's okay. For someone who's never heard of functional or integrative medicine, what is the simplest way to explain how it's different?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us, Sarah. So the way I like to describe it, and if you Google it or if you ask other people, they may describe it a little differently, but the way I like to describe integrative and functional medicine is that integrative medicine kind of pulls from different modalities. So that could be conventional medicine, that could be functional medicine as another vertical, it could be traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, naturopathy. You are looking at a person holistically in a way that you're pulling from different modalities to address the person in front of you in various different ways. And then functional medicine, I like to consider, is one of those modalities within integrative medicine in that world there. Some people don't like to consider it that way, but I do. And the way I think about functional medicine is it's really that root cause deep dive into what is going on with the person in front of you, what is underlying those symptoms, and doing more puzzle piecing to put together the picture of their labs, their history, their life in general, their symptoms into context with the whole person, and really trying to figure out what is underlying that. And that is functional medicine, is really getting to that deep root cause investigative type of work.
Awesome. So this goes to both of you. Whoever would like to answer first, take the floor. How did you start focusing on women's health, and was it intentional?
I'll start if you want, and then you can go into it. So for me, I had not intentionally said I'm going to only focus on women's health or anything. It was really that once I opened my practice, I wanted to not narrow down too much and kind of see who came in. And what I realized quickly was more than 90% of the people I work with are women. So I really did quickly kind of narrow into really focusing a lot into women's health. And within that, I'm even going further into very more specific specialties, very much hormonally related, whether it's perimenopause and menopause symptoms, or PMS, cycle-related, PMDD, endometriosis, fertility is a big one. So kind of getting into different areas there. But a lot of the people who are struggling with the symptoms that haven't been explained for years are unfortunately women. And so those are the ones who are finally tired after years of struggling, that are saying that's enough, and they're seeking alternative care because they're not getting answers in conventional medicine. So I think that's why so many women come to me, and that's where I ultimately have been focusing a lot in women's health.
Beautiful. Paula, how about for you?
Yeah, and Sarah, again, also thank you for having us, and thrilled to not only today, but looking forward to the August conference. For me, again, women's health wasn't intentional either. I had my 35 years, I was focused mostly in rare disease. I've done other things outside of rare disease, but I gravitated to rare disease because it is an area of such high unmet need. Interestingly, somewhat like Alexia, it's a lot of little puzzle pieces and figuring out what really is going on, and then getting to different types of technologies and innovation. gene therapy. Those are the types of things that I had been always gravitating towards. And as I've gone further in my career and now have choices on what I work on, especially in terms of venture, starting new companies, I saw the unmet need. There's so many women who have not gotten answers for various conditions. Some of it through my own lived experience. When I looked back, saying, "Well, all these things that I went through, maybe I didn't need to go through." I was also that cohort of women that went through perimenopause, menopause before things that have recently shifted in the conversation about hormone replacement therapy, and I had to do my own advocating and pushing when doctors were telling me no. And so there's a lot of that, a lot of personal, and then a lot of the parallels that I see with rare disease. And I feel like if I'm going to put my effort anywhere, I'm going to put it into these conditions and for the people who really need it most and need to start even at the earliest stages. There's just even from the early science and just getting people to invest. So that's the reason for my why.
I love it. And Paula, I'll kind of go from there. You talked about funding and the gaps. Where historically in women's health has it been underfunded and under-researched? And where are we still seeing those gaps?
Yeah, lots of gaps. And what's great, I think a lot of people are talking more and more about it. So you're hearing a lot about women's health and the need. But let me start at least first by talking about how I describe women's health and what is that, because these are conditions that can affect women only, like endometriosis, PCOS, now called PMOS, or things that predominantly affect women. 80% of autoimmune disease is in women. A lot of people don't know that. We're not understanding why. We're not studying it that way with a skew towards why women have so much autoimmune disease. And then conditions that differently affect women. So only, predominantly, and differently. And the ones differently, for example, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease presents very differently in women, and we haven't understood the biology and the why. And a lot of that is because there's so little dollars going into women's research. We are 51% of the population. We're not a niche, and 5% of global health R&D funding goes into women's health. That's global. And then only 1% of private healthcare investment. And I was on the venture investment side, and I could see it. I was working with a venture investment firm, working with other firms, trying to push investment in women's health. But it isn't just the private investing. It's also the fact that pharma, larger companies, have exited women's health. And if there isn't a buyer, then investment doesn't flow in. So a lot of those things cause this lack of understanding and this underserved population. We also had an issue with the fact that women were not allowed to be in clinical trials, to be studied in clinical trials until it was mandated in 1993. This was thought to protect women. But what it did was it looked at us as, well, we're just little men. You just scale it down. So the drugs that were developed, the medicines that were developed, were only studied in men. And we know for the reason they didn't want women is why we should be studying women. Our bodies are complex. Most medicines address a single point, a single, let's say, pathway. Most of these diseases, take endometriosis, have multiple things going on. There's inflammation, there's pain, it's full of many systems that are being addressed. A lot of what Alexia is seeing. So that's where we started to see the parallels. So that's some of the things that I see that are underinvested in. And we can talk about specific conditions like endometriosis that Alexia mentioned. It's something that is completely underappreciated, how many girls and women have this condition. They say 1 in 10. I think we're seeing that it might be more like 1 in 7. So there's at least 190, 200 million women and girls who have this condition. And it's always been written off as, well, heavy periods, a lot of pain. We don't talk about it. That's another reason why I think there's a lot of women's health underserved. We're not talking about it. We're not open about it. And it's pushed aside as, well, that's what being a woman is. So I'll stop there.
There's so much to be said about it, though, and I share your concerns and was so excited to see all of the big funding announcements during like the Big Health Week last year. And I think there's been quite a few others come down the way. And so hopefully there's some trajectory there. But Alexia, talking about your experience working specifically with 90% women, like you said, you're seeing these gaps in a very different perspective. So what is it that you're seeing with women who are coming in, and why you think conventional medicine is missing some of these signals and like, yeah.
I think the biggest thing that conventional medicine is missing is the integration of all the different specialties. In conventional medicine, we're very siloed. I mean, in medical school, you do not learn the body systems really as a connected whole. We learn every system from the tiny cells to the medications only as each system separately, like cardiology, nephrology, gastroenterology. We're not ever thinking, how are these connected? And so once you graduate medical school, you further specialize, and people keep going more and more specialized, and the doctors that patients are seeing are unfortunately not thinking, where can we put the pieces together, and how is your skin symptom or your mood symptom potentially connected to your gut? And so it's doing, unfortunately, women a disservice, because our bodies are so interconnected. Not saying that men's bodies aren't, but I think especially for women, our hormones really are helping connect so much of the pieces together that we cannot be looked at in isolation of each of the symptoms. And so women are bouncing around between different specialists. They're spending years, specifically, again, we're going to mention endometriosis many times here. They're spending up to 10 plus years waiting to be diagnosed, that they're tired, and they're not really getting answers. They're just sometimes getting surface level answers and band-aids that are really just masking symptoms, sometimes making it worse. And then 5-10 years down the line, they're realizing, okay, now I'm exhausted. I can't actually do anything I used to do anymore. I'm not sleeping well. I don't have the motivation to eat well or exercise. I have to take care of my family. I have to do work in this job. And they're struggling to balance everything. And then they go to the doctor and they hear, well, your labs are normal. There's nothing really wrong. Because the labs they're getting at their conventional appointments are very basic labs, where the reference ranges are so wide that, yeah, you probably fall into normal like most of the population. But that doesn't mean it's optimal. And that's not optimal for energy, for cognitive functioning, or really anything that we're talking about here for optimal performance. And so once they look deeper and they work with someone who actually looks at all the different markers that we're looking at, not just say one thyroid marker, you want to look at a lot of different markers, really want to look at 4 to 8 different markers to really understand the picture of your thyroid, for example. You'll understand, okay, maybe my body isn't actually as optimal as I'm thinking, and what can I do? And so that's where conventional medicine, unfortunately, is very reactive and kind of isolating, and not thinking about how can we optimize the body and really proactively get you in a better state, rather than trying to pull everything back together when everything seems like it's fallen apart.
Yeah. Alexia, I'd love to know if you could kind of expand on that. I know don't share names in specific detail, but do you have any case studies or examples of what this has looked like for any of your clients?
Actually, I have one person who comes to mind now thinking about thyroid. She has been working in a actually in a biotech company. Don't have to go more into detail than that, but she was in her late 30s, early 40s, roughly, and has had a very high functioning job for a while, very high functioning person, was able to kind of get through it, but really for the past several years had been getting more tired and unable to really keep up with the demands. But people at work maybe weren't noticing, her husband wasn't noticing, people in her life were just kind of, she felt, they could see her working well, so it didn't seem like anything was wrong, but inside she really felt like it. She was very anxious all the time. Her labs, when she went to her doctor, were normal. She'd get her thyroid checked, everything was fine. She came to me. We did a much more in-depth lab testing. We did some saliva cortisol, which really showed us actually not just the one blood marker she would get, but really just showing us throughout her day how she was doing. Her cortisol was through the roof. Her estrogen, progesterone were tanked. Her thyroid antibodies were actually really high. So that was something that she didn't realize. There was a lot of stress on her thyroid there that was causing probably a lot of these symptoms. And there was a lot of connection with the other hormones. Her vitamin D was really low because that was never tested. Her insulin resistance, we've had some there that she didn't actually ever get investigated with her conventional doctors because they said she was too young. So a lot of hormonal dysfunction. And once we really worked on that, Her anxiety went down. She was able to sleep better. And then her coworkers and her husband were saying, wow, you seem so much more relaxed. You seem happier. They didn't even realize the dysfunction she had earlier. But it's really a testament when other people say it as well. But she noticed it so much in herself. And when she went to the doctors would say, well, there's nothing wrong. So nothing we can do. And it was just some very simple changes that we could make within her lifestyle that made such a dramatic difference.
Yeah. I laugh because it's something that as women, we experience. We're just told like, oh no, you're fine. You're normal. Everything, your labs look great. You're totally healthy. But inside we know something's wrong or we know something's different. And then finally, once we figure it out, we get the support we need. It's like, oh, everyone else sees it too. There's a real change. And I'm so grateful for this conversation. So Paula, I'd like to take this a little bit more personally, if you don't mind. You built a company, you took it public, you got drugs approved, expanded globally, and at the same time, you were quietly dealing with your own health. Most people would look at you and see nothing but absolute success. I would love to know if you'd be willing to share what was really happening underneath it all.
Yeah, a lot of what Alexia was talking about, I was like, I didn't have thyroid issues, but it was the same thing was happening to me. And I think many of us, I was performing from an external perspective at a very high level. I had, again, all the things, taking a company public and leading a company as a CEO. It's a very demanding job. It's 365 days a year. And I definitely felt, exhausted, stressed, all those things, but I just thought it was the job and I kept pushing through. And I think also I was probably under the misconception that that is what leadership is. Sorry, you're the CEO, you've got to just continue to push through and perform. I was always on, always available. Alexia can attest to that, which she used to really hate. But you're operating at a level that just, you don't know what it's really costing you. And again, our conversations more later, she was saying your cortisol was probably always through the roof. You never slept. And I was thinking I wasn't sleeping well because, I had too much on my mind. It's not that. We did test my cortisol later and because of what she's doing, and it was through the roof at night when it should have been the opposite. Things like that. So, but I was our whole team was moving at an extraordinary pace. And from what we did in a very short period of time, going from first employee to 300 and all of the things that we achieved. And I'm very proud of what we achieved at our company. But I look back and I look at my health and it was not good. And I didn't really realize it at the time. I had signs of autoimmune disease. I had alopecia, like patches of hair that was falling out. I had ulcerative colitis. So those were diagnosed. I went to my doctor and then my ANA antibodies were up. They're like, well, we tested, you don't have lupus, you're fine. But why aren't we connecting all the dots here? What else is going on? And it was just, well, we'll just treat, this and we'll treat that and leave it at that. So those are some of the things I look back and say, wow, I think that all could have been done differently. I was also leading this company during my late 40s. So I went through perimenopause, in transition to menopause, while I was leading a company as a CEO at the highest and the peak of what we were doing, which is fine. Doesn't mean that women can't do that. Of course we can do that. But what I know now is there were things that I could do to take care of myself better that I wasn't. I was gaining a lot of weight. I didn't know why. I couldn't understand because I wasn't eating, because I wasn't taking the time for good meals and so those are the things that I think we have to change the narrative and say, this is not what it should look like. Just because we're in this, we're in a high performing job, but we can't just continue to push through because it does cost you. It costs a lot in terms of, your own energy, your own health, your relationships, all of those things. And I think at the end of the day, it's as though I'm performing at a somewhat of a, inauthentic self, because I am on the outside looking as if I'm resilient, but I'm really not. I was breaking down internally. And so that is very expensive and it takes a toll on you as a person. And I think it also takes a toll on the people around you, because when I got home after all of this traveling, I really had no energy to do anything else. And so that affects, your personal life, or even at work? Are you giving your best self to your employees? Are you modeling something that's good? I had an employee once, she was a direct report, say something. I would always say to people, oh, you don't have to answer my emails on the weekend or night. It's just how I manage my time. I was in meetings all day. And so the only time I could get to my email and respond was at night or weekends. And her comment was, but you're our boss. We're going to respond to you. And it was a huge aha. My stress was adding to their stress unnecessarily. It was the first time I learned about how to do this little thing where you can put a timer to send the email the next day. It was a small point, but it was a big moment for me to say, wait a minute, just because I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm also affecting other people. So it's not just costing me, costing them as well.
Paula, so good. Thank you so much for sharing. Alexia, you grew up watching this happen live. I'd love to know what your thoughts are as the daughter and medical doctor you are now today. What do you think hearing all of this?
I mean, looking back, I now think that what she's saying is correct. She did work a lot. It did impact the way I mean, at the time, and now looking back, I wouldn't change anything. More just out of concern for how much she maybe worked and how it impacted her health. And I see that day to day with so many of the people I work with, that their jobs are really some of their largest source of stress, because they're working so hard to achieve the next level and to keep going. And not saying that they can't do that, and that's not, doesn't need to be a priority for them, but that prioritizing their health is actually probably just as important, if not more, because it allows them to perform better. It allows them to um, impact more people, or to show up better in all areas of their lives. And it'll allow them to be more productive in work, have clearer thinking, have more energy to do things. And I think that women, especially when they're trying to climb a corporate ladder, don't think about that, because they're thinking, well, I just have to keep going, and going doesn't matter the cost to myself, my body. And then I'm realizing it with the people I work with, and then I see the similarities with how my mom was, over the past decade or two, where I would witness it and see all the health struggles she had, but also just how much she just would keep pushing. And I just wish that maybe she, at the time, realized that. And so, but that's what I want to help other women
Had
do.
you
I
as a
know she's,
doctor then.
yeah, if I were only a doctor then, I'm a little too young. So I just now see that and want to help other women mitigate the effects of that as they advance in their careers as well.
That's awesome. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the book that you guys wrote later here in just 1 second. I want to ask two more questions, and we're gonna get to it. But y'all, we have a really special announcement, so please make sure you stay till the very end about this book coming up down the line. But Alexia, I'd love for you to know, what are some things that you can share with the women who have joined us, especially high performing women, of what can they do to gain back the control of their health, their resilience in this time of uncertainty and low funding?
I mean, there's so much you can do. And I think that it starts with just the understanding that you have so much control you have the ability to take control of your health. You don't have to outsource it to doctors, to the internet, to now AI, or, other people. Of course, there's a time and place for all of those, especially in traditional medicine. There's for acute issues, definitely want to go there. But for chronic things, lifestyle, just how you feel 80 to 90% of the time during the day, that's really in your hands, in terms of how you're moving, how you're sleeping, what you're putting in your body, who you're spending your time with, boundaries that you set. There's so much you can do, and within the context of your own life, that really can move the needle and how you feel. And so, thinking about what areas do you prioritize? Like, are you going to prioritize your movement? Add that into your day, and find pockets of movement and ways you can add it in. Are you going to prioritize your sleep? Okay, maybe rather than sending emails from bed, you put that away, you get a good night's sleep, and then when you have more energy throughout the day, then you'll be more productive. There's just different ways that you can see where you can individually prioritize different aspects of your health. And I mean, working with someone, or kind of sitting down and writing this out and figuring out where you prioritize is obviously going to be important for each individual. But as a general sense, everyone can really find time throughout their day to prioritize their health, because I want you to understand it is that important. It allows you to feel like you have more control throughout your day. You have more balance in your life, and so that you aren't going to just burn yourself out in work or taking care of your family. You are ultimately so important that you need to put your own oxygen mask on first, so that you can help others, so that you can be more productive in your work, in your day to day family life, and whatever else that you want to achieve.
I
Yeah,
love
that reminds me, just to add, in my part of my
that.
time running, I realized that I needed to make some space. And these were little changes I made that were incredibly helpful. And you just reminded me of those. I discovered meditation at that time, and because I hadn't been a meditator before then. And it made such a huge difference because even in the middle of a huge busy day, I was trying to carve out even 10 minutes. And I would go into, we had a room that was really for like a wellness room or for nursing moms, and we didn't have any at the time. So I could lock the door, I'd go in and do a 10-minute meditation, really ground myself. And it made such a difference. Or I started taking walking meetings. We had the benefit of being in the seaport of Boston. So in the warm days, I could walk outside. So if I could do a walking meeting, if it was a one-on-one, I did that. It was really towards the latter part of my time there where I started to say, what am I doing? What are these things that I could change? So I wasn't all the way there with the things that could prioritize me and my health, but that helped. Even those two little things helped tremendously in just getting through a lot of what we were doing in a day.
Amazing. Yeah, the power of meditation and just taking time for you, getting yourself centered, it's amazing what that can do. Alexia, Paula, I'd love to know y'all's experience with, there's a lot of conversations around the difference between intermittent fasting and like cycle syncing for women in terms of workouts. What does the science say behind all that? Is there proof behind the pudding? What should women be thinking about with all of this?
Yeah, for intermittent fasting, I mean, a lot of the research has unfortunately been done on men.
Yeah.
So we get this blanket statement of, I mean, and this was really a trend a couple years ago where people were really going into intermittent fasting. I think now, as more of women's health is coming about and more talking about hormones, I'm hoping people understand that we need more nuance in the shifts there. But I've seen a lot of women come to me where they hadn't been eating breakfast, and they eat maybe the first thing's at 2 p.m. now because they keep going later and later. So it was 12 and now it's 1 and 2. And they're shutting down their metabolism. Their hormones are tanking because they are not really, their bodies don't feel safe. Fasting for men, they can get away with it. A postmenopausal woman potentially could as well, a little bit more. But a cycling woman, especially in the second half of her cycle, is going to have a lot harder of a time. It's a big stressor on the nervous system, and the body really wants to feel safe. First of all, for reproduction, so to have a healthier cycle, but that's a side note. But just in general, so women will say, "Well, I'm fasting, but I'm still gaining weight," because your body can't let go of anything if it doesn't feel like it's in a safe mode. That's physically also a famine if you're starving yourself of food, even in a time restricted area. But just think about other stressors. We live in a high stress environment. We have stressful jobs. People are commuting. We have demands. We have social media. So our nervous systems are already on high alert as it is. And so when we add an additional stressor like that, it can make it even more stressful to the body, can make it more difficult and not get the benefits that you're thinking of with fasting. A 12-hour overnight fast, from dinner till breakfast, you even say like 7 or 8 p.m. to 7 or 8 a.m. is a perfect amount of time to still get the benefits, the cellular clean out, the autophagy, everything that you get with fasting without that nervous system stress. So that's what I think a lot of the science for women is saying. But when you talk about it in general and you hear the gurus talk about fasting, they're really just giving blanket statements because that's the research that's been done on men. And then similarly with cycle syncing, there's a lot of emerging research coming out about that as well. Cycling, with based on the different weeks of the cycle, whether that is a little bit like fasting, you can do it a little bit more in the first couple weeks, or you can do more high intense workouts the first couple weeks as well. And then certain foods that are also more supportive for different hormones. There's a lot of emerging research on that. And depending on the person who's sitting in front of me and kind of their needs, I do work on it with them, but everyone's very individual.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. As someone who's been following, I myself did partake in intermittent fasting and was trying to go for those 16-hour fasts, but then I found out what it was doing to my hormones or what it could be doing to my hormones. So now, while I felt very confident in my ability to do it and very competitive in it, I was like, I don't know if it's the right thing for me still. So I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know if there's any other ladies who need this conversation, but it's a big one. And so just really excited to have you guys all both here. Would love to talk more about y'all's book at this point. Paula, Alexia, this upcoming book. You said October 7th is the release date?
October 6th
Oh,
release.
one
Yes.
day first. Okay, earlier. Great. I can't wait. Would love to hear about how this came together.
Yeah. I'll start. So the book is called.
Put that slide up.
Oh, good. So if you put that up, it'll show. The book is called Restoring Balance, an integrative approach to women's health through nutrition, lifestyle, and systems biology that we both co-authored, and very excited about that. Actually, this is our first time talking about it publicly. So thank you for giving us this forum to do that. And we've really wanted to put something together. If you've noticed, there's a lot of overlap between our some of the things that we're focused on in women's health, but from a very, very different approach and lens. Obviously, mine coming more from looking at trying to develop medicines and seeing this underserved population through a medical system that is just maybe not built for women only. And also knowing and seeing what Alexia was doing and saying, wow, while we're sitting here trying to, advocate for more funding and dollars to get into research, to do basic early research, she's having success helping women. So let's get this out there as quickly as possible. But this really is a book that we hope bridges both conventional and integrative medicine. It's not a one or the other, but it's to really give women agency over their own health and really learn how to work with their own body and their ability to restore, repair, adapt, to become more resilient. And we've hope that readers will see it's clinically grounded and scientifically grounded, but accessible enough that puts that power back in women's hands. Maybe Alexia can elaborate more.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really for any woman of any age or life stage, whether you're in the cycling part of life that we mentioned, or perimenopause, menopause, you have certain conditions like endometriosis, PCOS, PMOS, autoimmune. Really, we try to touch on everything that can impact women, as my mom mentioned earlier, whether it impacts women differently, only women, or disproportionately. So, really talking all about that and how all the hormonal changes throughout life are really impacting different areas. And then talking a lot about what you can do lifestyle wise, really through nutrition, sleep, stress management, movement, and different areas of life that are very much in your control, as I've mentioned before, in your hands, and that you can work on a lot of these things to restore the balance in your life, repair, become more resilient, as she mentioned. And especially for women who've been told their labs are fine and, still feel like that's not the case and that there's something else going on and they know there's something might be wrong, what you can do about that, how to advocate for yourself. And also a note to doctors, other healthcare professionals about, being a little more open-minded of the type of medicine that you practice or the type of medicine that we're creating in the world, and what you can do in that setting to help your patients, help serve the greater population as well.
And we've also have a section that we talk about the problem, some of the foundations across all different again women systems and cycles, but also talk about how employers could be thinking about women's health and integrating this in conversation into the workplace to support women. But then also we end with a vision of what we believe, the medical system, where it could go with this really more integrated model. So we're excited to get it out in the world and to share some of our kitchen table conversations that turned into writing.
Awesome. Well, I just can't wait to get a copy myself. For those of you who are joining us and still here, I'm happy to announce we will be giving this book away free at the event. So if you are joining us, get ready for your signed copy from Paula and Alexia. We are just so excited to be able to bring this conversation to life during this webinar today and in August. Would love to make sure we have about 7 minutes. If y'all have any questions you'd like to ask Alexia and Paula specifically, that I leave any specific time for those, feel free to put those questions in the chat. If you don't, Nancy, Michelle, so good to see you guys. We're both here, as well as the rest of you guys. I just saw that those two had put some love in the chat for us just now. But just wanted to say thank you all so much for joining us. Paula, Alexia, any other final thoughts you'd like to share before we depart?
Well, I think because what some of the things that we're going to talk about at the August, we'll obviously save some things for on stage there in August. But I think an important part of this conversation is tying this back to organizations. Because what a lot of what Alexa has been talking about is building your own personal resilience and feeling safe, right, in your body. And so a lot of the things that she talked about earlier about nervous system regulation, these are responses, right, of how your body feels safe and adapts to what's going on. Well, the same thing is happening in our organizations, right? We want to build resilient teams, and how do you do that? But you have to start first with the individuals on your team, and how do they see their leaders? Is there trust in their leaders? Do they feel safe? How are we building that resilience? And I had an example of a boss I used to work with that used to always have us all in crisis mode all the time.
Yeah.
And it's fine. Just like your body, you should be able to adapt, and people should be able to perform when you need to. And again, do what it takes, weekends, whatever, nights, or when there is a true crisis, when the need is there. But he was of the philosophy, no, you got to have everybody ready. So he was always creating crises. We would always have something would happen on a holiday weekend every single time. And I challenged him on it. He said, well, this is how you lead. I'm giving you really good examples of how you lead and build organizational resilience. And I think it's the opposite of that. I think there's a lot of that you need to do to build that trust, that rapport, that vision in the company, so that when you do need to turn it on, people do trust you, they feel safe, and they can do that. So there's a lot more we can talk about that, but that is something I just wanted to introduce, that I think there's a tie to a lot of what Alexia talks about in terms of you personally and your body to how we look at organizations as well.
Thank you so much for tying that back. Alexia, any final thoughts?
I would just like to echo that. I think a lot of it is really finding the safety within your body. And I think for so many symptoms, it's ultimately our bodies are not feeling safe in the environment that we're living in, and the high stress and the constant notifications and just disrupted nervous systems. Like, we're living with lights on at midnight, where before, think about ancestrally, we wouldn't have. And which is fine. That's how society is, and that's how we're building anything in the world. But our bodies are, not necessarily meant to and adaptive for that. But adding in more safety to your body allows you to have that resilience, rather than testing it all day long with different stressors. Where can you add in more safety, more grounding, so that you can then respond, you can be more adaptive to the demands that we are in life. So like she said, I think it's very much applicable to your health in every other area of your life too.
Absolutely. Well, ladies, thank you so much for your time. I'm so
Thank
glad
you.
to have been able to have this opportunity to talk to you guys for so long about women's health and leadership and how we can better take care of our bodies. I'm so excited to continue this conversation in more detail in August. It's going to be incredible. But just want to say, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. For those who got to attend, I'm so grateful for your participation, and hope you found something that was useful for your life that you can take back now, and hope that you will join us as well in August. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone.
You.
Bye.